This is Mitch, and welcome to the 1000houses.com podcast. I'm here with Eddie Speed, the world-renowned Eddie Speed. I've known this guy for, I don't know, since the late 90s. We became friends. We met at a 3-day boot camp somewhere, someplace in New Jersey or New York, or I don't remember. But we hit it off from the very beginning. We've been friends ever since. Eddie and I have watched each other go through the throes and the ups and downs of this business. And between the two of us, and I never like to say this for sure, so I'll leave the caveat with a little asterisk. There ain't anything we haven't seen. Asterisk, but there still could be something else coming. Because you know how that is, right, Eddie?
I do.
All right, so I'd like to thank our sponsor, livecom.com, livecom.com. There's a reason why I'm averaging 9 days on the market and 12% down on my seller finance homes. Watch the video on the homepage and just get an inkling of what it can do. It is a very powerful program, very affordable, and you'll be impressed. We're tying it to Facebook, which is a free place to post all your inventory and start a community. Just to give you a hint, I have 24,000 people that refuse to opt out of my text messaging list because they are interested in the next seller financed house I have in my area. San Antonio is a population of about 2 million people. I have 24,000 people that when I have a new house come on the market for 2 cents a piece, I can hit people that have already raised their hand, have already called my signs, have already inquired about seller financing homes so they can quit paying rent and start to be an owner. And 24,000 I can hit for 2 cents a piece. It's right between the eyes. It's like the most affordable advertising you can get. Livecom.com, livecom.com. All right, Eddie, got the bills paid, so time to get on with the good stuff. Now, just for you guys that don't know Eddie, I don't want to brush over this because I know him so well, but he's done, over 40,000 notes himself. His students have collectively purchased and had over $3.5 billion worth of transactions that they can directly say, thanks to Eddie, they were able to figure out and complete. So when I tell you this guy's been in the business, I don't know anyone else is that deep in the business that's willing to educate someone on it, If you're like me, Eddie, there's a bigger gun, a faster gun somewhere, but I don't know anyone who's willing to teach you and has spent the years teaching. How long have you been educating people on this subject, Eddie?
Oh, probably 20 years. I've been doing it about 20 before I started doing that. I started in 1980, and then by probably around 2000, you what it's like, Mitch, you don't exactly write down the date for some reason. You don't know where it's going. But yeah. Right around 2000 is when I started teaching.
Yeah, so the point is, if 10,000 hours is what it takes to be one of the best in the world at what you do, Eddie and I both have about 50,000 hours in whatever the hell we're doing. So, so a little bit of it was probably the wrong direction, but then we figured out it was the wrong direction, so we come back. So we have a lot of hours in this. So Eddie, we were talking about the market right now, and in buying houses at 65 and 70 cents on the dollar is getting pretty tough right now for a multiple of reasons. You can chime in on this, but I'll say I think it is. Number one, it was getting tough to begin with because, A&E and every other HGTV radio TV cable show was about flipping houses, and they make it look so easy and so glorious and so pretty, and they show you all these big checks. They're not really talking about the downside of any of this. So everybody I know is trying to do a house flip or buy a note or something. So that was one. And then COVID comes along, and MLS listings are way down because people don't want people in their house, because of the COVID. And number two, they keep extending the evictions and the foreclosures, then the courthouses are shutting down. So we can't get to any of those problem properties, or there's no pressure for these people to make a move right now. So, because a lot of people are just sitting for free in houses because they know that they can't get punted right now. So we're going to talk about today how to up that inventory. So Eddie, first of all, do I have the reason for the tightness in the market, or you got other reasons?
No, I think you nailed it. I think those are all the reasons. It's, as long as you and I've been doing this, it's the weirdest time in the market I believe I've ever seen.
Well, and there's a lot of us out there, explaining to people that, there's a way to get fire your boss and get a job. So there's a whole multitude of reasons. It's just gotten very competitive, and inventory has dried up for certain reasons. So, we're going out, we're making these cash offers, and people are saying no, or they're really slow to react. But Eddie's been working on an angle that really, really is a positive angle. Talk to us a little bit about what you're teaching now.
So, Mitch, as you and I know, we have circles of people that are our peers in the business, right? People that do, we're in masterminds and those kind of things where people do hundreds of deals a year. And those are great because you get to be with high volume guys, and if the market's trending, you get to know it's trending, right? So probably 2 years ago, way prior to the virus, I was listening to these guys in masterminds, and they were essentially all saying the same thing. My conversions are dropping, right? In other words, the number of offers they make to get one bought, right? Buying a house for cash at a discount. And their margins were shrinking, meaning that there was more competition, and their competition would raise the price, and there's sort of a ceiling on what they could wholesale it for. So they were wholesaling houses. They were making less margin per transaction, and they were buying less transactions for every 25 deals that they were offering, right? I said, why don't you guys buy on terms? I said, you could pay retail. Now, these are a pretty seasoned bunch of guys, right? And they looked at me like I'd had two heads, right? They're like, what do you mean you could pay retail? I'm like, you can go pay anything for the property. It depends on how you pay it back, right? So I had, Mitch, and you have run with a circle of people and stuff. The top 5% of every real estate investor sort of feels like they've got in their war chest, they know how to make terms offers. Get the seller to carry financing for you, right? Creative financing. But what I figured out was when I interviewed a lot of those guys is they sort of had an offer and a structure, or maybe two, right? Yeah. But they weren't like backing into how to make an offer. They weren't like backing into it with the story. And so I started taking some of these case studies and reworking them and taking closed deals and saying, no, guys, you could structure it this way or this way or this way. And all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't think about it. So here's the answer. Just my own study here. I figured out that about 50% of people that have a house for sale and are really motivated and need to sell it, they have a money situation, right? And about 50% of the people that had a house for sale and really wanted to sell it had a real estate problem. And a real estate problem, I discovered, was way different than a money problem. They needed to get rid of their property. They were not going to sell the property at a deep discount to do it. So as long as they psychologically, Mitch, could go to the closing table and the closing statement say they sold it at retail or almost retail, 90 cents of retail or 95 cents of retail, they felt like they accomplished everything. Now, how did I figure out people were willing to do that? Because for the last 40 years, I've closed. We didn't even send you the best update because I think I've actually closed over 50,000 deals.
Okay. Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
But right? Who's counting? A lot.
But I believe I've probably looked at 300,000 deals. Because, Mitch, most of the stuff we look at, we didn't buy. But here's the pattern. The pattern is that people have been showing up at my doorstep for the last 40 years with a seller finance note, trying to sell us the note. And I've seen what they've agreed to. I've seen the terms and the conditions that they thought was a good deal.
The seller thought was a good deal and took it.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God. And ask them, and not, they don't know that we're probing this, but we're asking them, like, why did you agree to this? You know the number one reason they agreed to it?
Why?
They got their price.
Yeah.
They gave the farm away because they got their price. And so I just really zeroed in on that.
Well, you got to qualify that. They gave the farm away because they got their price. It sounds like an oxymoron. What you're saying, they gave the farm as far as terms away because the bottom line price was market price or just below market price barely or whatever. So when you say gave the farm away, you're meaning they gave whatever terms they needed to give, but they're focused on that sales price at the top of the page, and so that's why they agree. So I like what you said. They either have a money problem or they have a real estate problem. Just a little bit on that money problem.
Well, if people have a money problem, the wolves are at the door, right? They need money. They're willing to sell the house at a discount. There's some reason real estate brokerage doesn't solve every problem, or Mitch, you and I wouldn't exist. If real estate brokerage solved every real estate problem known to man, there would be no need for a house buyer and no need for a creative finance guy, right? So there's some reason that they didn't list it and sell it to a realtor, right? It could be because they're weird and they don't want anybody in their house, or it could be because the house needs repairs, or it could be, just a myriad of reasons, right? The most obvious is the house needs repairs, but that's not exclusively true, right? But they need to sell the house, and if the wolves are at the door and they're willing to go sell at a discount because the cash, I got to have the cash. That's one customer, right? But I figured out just in probing a lot of people that are big operators like you and Mike, Mitch, that was a reason, but it wasn't exclusively the reason that somebody marketed their house to sell. So the other side is somebody's got a money problem, a real estate problem. You guys closed. I saw a case study with Mike the other day of a killer deal that you guys did, a killer deal. I mean, that deal is the money. It's the warehouse and the land and all that stuff. That's a killer deal. That guy, Mitch, in my mind, had a real estate problem. It was just weird enough. Nobody knew how to sell it because they didn't have a vision of how to go reposition the property like you guys did.
Let me tell you what the real problem is, and we just found out. There's no water. You can't get water on that. The well to drill to get a water, you have to go 1,800 feet, and it's a $200,000 well. But we saw right off the bat that it had 6,000 square foot metal roof building, and a water capture system solves the problem, and it's not that big a deal. It's a $25,000 deal now, the problem, instead of a $200,000. So, and of course he didn't tell us that, and we didn't let him know that we knew that he wasn't telling us. We just knew what the problem was, and we knew how to solve the problem. Okay, so go ahead.
So that's the whole story over and over and over. Entrepreneurs solve problems, right?
Yes.
And cash does not solve everybody's problem. It solves some people's problems, but cash doesn't solve everybody's problem. So the other side of the equation is that if you approach the people that you made a cash offer to, and you gave it a solid try, right? You didn't give up the first time you made them an offer, but you worked that funnel, you worked that selling cycle, and they still didn't convert.
For 2 years.
Well, but I'm just saying most guys that are buying houses, they're blowing through leads, mm-hmm. and then they're trying to, they got a follow-up system, but at some point the follow-up system should be this. So Mitch, we got another department in the company, and I don't know whether this makes sense or not, but if we could buy this property on creative financing where you helped us with the financing of the property, that would be a very likely situation that we could increase the price we paid. Would that be of interest to talk about to you?
I'd be a fool not to listen.
You know what I'm saying? So starting the conversation's not like going to the moon. And this is my whole thing. And so, I was telling you before, and of course you've been watching me as I did this, because I'm in and around these masterminds. I've got about 20 of these guys that are what I call ninja real estate investors. They're hot shots, right? Now I'm around a whole bunch of them, more than that, but I got about 20 of these guys that I really kind of brought in and like got into, like, what do creative terms really mean? Like, what does that look like? And then all of a sudden they started realizing, oh my gosh, you are totally right. We can't believe the people that would go consider selling their house for a higher price, even though seemingly they initially said, oh, I got to have all cash. Well, when people can't wrap their mind around anything but you're buying a property from them, how can they see anything other than you're going to pay them cash up front? Because that's the only method they could think of. So when they started really introducing the idea of, hey, you can get a higher price for your property, the customer leans in, says, tell me more, blah, blah, blah. And then the thing is, Mitch, and this is, I think, the most critical thing. The thing is kind of learning like some patterns with people, right? Every top 5% real estate investor in the country completely understands, oh, I like to make my terms offer with no interest. It's principal only payments, right? We've all heard this, and you can do that.
You can start there. You don't have to.
Statistically, let me just tell you this. We price 3,000 one-off notes a year on our trade desk, okay? I got a bunch of big box shop guys that all ran the institutions for the seller finance industry that run my operation side, as you know, Mitch. I mean, Bob Repass runs my operations. They were buying $400 million in seller finance notes a year. So we've seen a lot of volume. We have a lot of patterns. Only 18% of people that seller finance carried at 0% interest. Now, that's not zero, but only 18% of them do that. In other words, some people just have a mental block. They're just not going to carry it at 0% interest. Okay, well, how do you do that? What do you do, right? If they won't carry it at 0% interest, you're like, well, I got to put an interest rate on it. Well, let me give you a good solid nugget. I might say, Mitch, I have to get you to carry this for me for 20 years because I'm going to do what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to sell your property for more money, but be smart like the furniture store and not discount your property. You just got to take your payments over time, right? And then I'm going to do the same thing, Mitch. I'm going to go find some good customer that needs deserving for financing because the banks have left them behind. And by the way, 30% of the people that could get a mortgage in January can't get one today. So that's a legitimate statement for sure. So I'm going to go find this person and I'm going to resell it to them. And I'm going to carry my profit over time, just like you are. But Mitch, in order to do that, you're saying you insist on the interest rate. What seems fair to you? And you say, I don't know, 4%.
I tell you exactly what I say. I say, well, the banks are offering 1%. I'm willing to be more than fair. I kind of set the bar low and say, what's fair to you? But I already kind of like slapped them with that low expectation.
So here's the thing. I said I named an above market rate, and that was acting as if you insisted on above market rate. Well, that makes the seller financing bargain go away, right? And I say, Mitch, if you will help me do what I need to do, I would even be willing to pay you more interest than you're asking for, and you're asking for above market rates. And of course, you lean up and go, tell me more. And so then what I get you to do is a 20-year note. The first 10 years are zero interest. Now, you got to remember, Mitch, I'm sawing off the principal of this loan, like boom, right? Okay. And then I say I give you 5% interest, but I'm paying you 5% on about half of the principal I would normally be paying.
I see.
Got it?
So you offered a higher rate, but because of the terms, you're actually paying less than what they even wanted to begin with.
It's a smoking deal. That's an example of what I've learned. Now, there's nerds that can get on a whiteboard. Mitch, you and I know them. There's nerds that can get on a whiteboard and do financial modeling, but they can't do it in a way that somebody will agree to it. You know what I'm saying? If you can't get somebody to stay in the sandbox with you, you're pretty much out, right, Mitch?
Yes. Yeah. It looks good on paper, but if people don't say yes, throw that away.
So I've really worked at doing stuff that I know financially is to a great advantage, but positioning in such a way that I can help people help them get it closed. That's kind of a little specialty.
So if you're listening to this podcast right now, you just got a tremendous nugget. And believe me, Eddie's full of them. I love talking to the guy because he jars my memory of what I should be doing. You know, sometimes we've heard all this stuff and we think we know this stuff, but we get stuck in our routine and we don't make or think about certain kind of offers. Again, you know, you offer them more interest than they're asking, but tell them their interest rate won't kick in for 10 years. During that first 10 years, you're knocking the tar out of the principal balance so that when you finally get to the year that you have to start paying interest, you're not paying interest on nearly the balance. Actually, probably, and I haven't done the math here, but in a lot of cases, you'll be paying less than the initial interest offer that your seller made. So it's a great, great strategy. I love it.
Now, that deal, if it stays in place, is huge economic advantage for you, right? But here's the other stat, right? Now, I think this makes us unique because there's no other, as far as I'm aware of, there's no executive team that's seen more seller finance transactions than ours, right? I'm fairly sure of that, right? I mean, we've closed on billions of dollars of seller finance notes. God knows how many we've seen. So here's a pattern. Mom and pop, not Mike and Mitch, you know, not professional guys like you, but just amateur seller financiers, right? If they own a note past 10 years, the odds of them selling their note at a discount go out of sight. So guess what? I agreed to pay 5% interest. But the truth of the matter is, I probably won't ever pay 5% interest because I'm going to buy my own debt at a discount from them because I'm going to put a first right of refusal in there that's tight. And I'm going to buy my own note. So guess what? They gave me unbelievable terms of seller financing. And when the interest rate kicks in is about when the odds are that they're going to sell me the note at a discount anyway, because some life event comes along.
Well, yeah, because that's true. We do that when our sellers finance us. Every year we offer them some kind of discount if they want to cash out. And you know, 1 year will go by and they don't have that life event. 2 years will go by, but like year 3 or 4 or something, they say, man, I really need that money now. And they take the discount. The other thing that dawned on me is you got that 20-year note at 10 years interest free. And then you start paying 5% for the last 10 years. You could just set yourself up on a 10-year payout and you're interest only. No, you effectively got a
you could, but I tell people, because you and I know a lot of people that get really enamored with zero interest, right? And so I tell them, here's a mathematical question. Would you rather pay 3% interest for 20 years or 0% interest for 9 years? And of course, everybody goes, I'd rather pay 0%. Then I show them an Excel graph, which you know I can do, Mitch, and I show them how, if you sold that loan today at the same yield, that 3% 20-year note is worth less cash today than that 0 interest rate 9-year note, right? So I've learned the most valuable thing is to push the money out, right? But mathematically, present value formula, right? Just, we're all got our, propeller head on, right? Mathematically, that's true. But psychologically, the more that money I owe them in the future, the more likely I am to buy my own note at a discount.
Wow, amazing. Do you still have they perfected that calculator where you can run the cash on cash versus the notes and it'll tell you, you can pay cash for this or you can use these terms and it's exactly the same ROI?
Yeah, we got it. And that's an application that we give people down the road. So okay. Yes, Russ, our guy that built that for us, it's really cool. And you can do all kind of crazy stuff with it. Sometimes, Mitch, I'll help people structure just what I call a generic seller finance deal, right? But a lot of times, if I understand where the customer's objection is, and usually, honestly, it's about price, that's number one. If I understand where their objections are, then it gives me all kind of ways to angle it. And I love the model that you really perfected well, which is borrowing private money. About half the time, there's some private money involved, and so you just simply you borrow a lower amount of money from a private investor. And the top end of the deal is seller finance. So the seller then subordinates their lien position to a private lender. Of course, a private lender could include, cash to the seller. It could include repairs. It could include your down payment. So then to think in terms of, you might do it something like this. You got a $100,000 purchase price. You borrow $50,000 from a private lender and $50,000 seller financed. And you can come up with all kind of creative terms of how to pay that seller $50,000 back, but you're doing it in a way that it's to your advantage. So you don't, people say, well, I've tried to make seller finance offers, but they wouldn't take, they needed some cash up front. Okay, I've figured that out. About 50% of the time that's true. And so you got to go come up with some kind of strategy to do it. I had a guy that brought a deal to me literally yesterday, and they owed about $60,000 on an existing mortgage, but the property at retail was going to be worth $175,000. Now he had to go do some repairs to it and some things like that. I said, don't fool with doing a sub two on that $60,000 mortgage. It's just a pain in the tail. You can do sub twos, and I teach that, but to do a $60,000 sub two, I said, just go get private money. I said, the difference when you're paying 6% on private money and 4.75% taking over somebody's existing mortgage is a pain. Now, this guy was a fairly high volume guy, right? He says, okay, well, all right, Eddie, great idea. How do I go find the money? I said, don't you have some ridiculous buyer's list? He said, yeah. He said, we flip thousands of houses, right? I said, okay, well, there's your lender. I said, guess what? There's a whole lot more those people that love HGTV on your buyer's list that would rather make you a loan and not have a headache than to go sell them a house and sell them a headache. They've already had the headache. I said, you're going to make them a loan. You're going to borrow $60,000. The house is going to be worth $180,000. What's their risk? He goes, oh. I said, so now you're using your buyer's list for a totally different purpose. You're sourcing private money with it.
Yes. So we've always had the theory that we could pay almost anything for a house if you'll give me my terms. It doesn't matter the price. I mean, I could take a $200,000 house. I can pay you $1 million for it if you'll give me my terms. And it's a way out there example, but if you'll carry the $1 million and my first payment's not for 30 years, then we're good because I'm going to be dead. So that's an extreme example, but there's always a set of terms you can win on no matter the price. And I think that's your point, right?
It is.
And now the question is like that example of 10 years, no interest. And then the next 10 years, I'll pay you more than you're asking in interest. That's a beautiful example of just not knowing what you don't know. I know I know that terms will win, but I never thought about that set of terms because that set of terms wins on a bunch of levels. One, they get their price. B, it just looks good. Like you said, we're emotional about 0%. They're emotional about that 5%. And even though the other way would be better for them, they're fixed on the visual of that number 5 in that slot.
You know how I came up with that idea, Mitch?
No, tell me, please.
I was helping people do this and understand, and the type of people I'm dealing with, right? They're really smart, but they're a little bit insecure about structuring these deals. And so they would come to me and they say, look, the guy just will not carry terms over 10 years. He just won't carry terms over 10 years, right? He just won't do it. He'll carry it 0%, even a 30-year AM, but in 10 years, he wants all his money. I said, well, the problem is in 10 years, your loan, unless you have a balloon on the other side of your wrap, you got to struggle with that. And I said, then the odds of buying your own note at a discount go down. I said, what if past 10 years I paid you a ridiculous interest rate? Would you consider it? And consistently those guys started saying, yeah, they leaned up and said, tell me more. That's how I got to that idea. was I was trying to get longer term because I'm a terms guy, not a rate guy. I believe that terms, if you're negotiating your debt, the longer term that a seller carries the terms for you, I believe that is excessively more powerful than the other side of the equation, which is, okay, gave me 0%. Because Mitch, you and I've seen a zillion guys walk in there and just think they killed it because they got 7 or 8 years, 0 interest. And I'm like, okay, how much money did you really save? Right? I mean, they feel like they did really good, but it doesn't, the modeling's not there. So it's just kind of weird how you figure this stuff out.
It's certainly not good if you don't get the deal, because then you got 0. And how many of them could you have saved? What I find interesting is this should really be perking up the listeners to say, you got all those people that turned you down. This is another way to readjust your thinking, get to know some of these creative offers, get 3, 4, 5, 6 of them in your pocket, ways to run at it, and then call them back and say, I've been thinking about that house and I think I could get much closer to the market price that you're asking if you would make just a few concessions, and if you're interested in hearing about it, I think I can get you pretty close to market price. I don't know anybody who's really going to say no to that. Of course, there's always the loons out there, but you have a really good chance. And this is an opportunity to take this whole long list of dead leads in your CRM and, hand pick who this person is that calls them. Make sure they understand exactly how to make offers on terms and have more than one offer. That's the cool thing about terms. There's really no limit to the amount of ways you can structure it. You just really got to do what you said. You've got to smell out your seller. You got to figure out what his problem is, what his objections are, and then you got to tailor that offer to them. Like you said, is it a money problem or is it a real estate problem? Is he too old and doesn't want to go out? I mean, where's his objection to financing the property? And, maybe he says, no, I got to have my money. Well, do you need all of this money to solve your problem? So, well, no, I need 25,000 of it, or I need 50,000 of it. Okay, so we just cut it down now. So you're only dealing with that part of the bigger picture, just the 50,000 part he needs now. What can you do to get him 50,000 and still make the deal a winner for you? So, does this change? Well, you've like kind of stopped how you used to do things, and you've just gone way into teaching people about these seller financed offers, right? Or
no, I mean, we still have 12 or 1,500 assets under management on any given day. I mean, I've got a note shop, and I still teach people a lot of retirement strategies, right? Here's how I look at it, Mitch. If you like somebody like you that knows me this well, you say, what is Eddie's unique skill? You say, Eddie is good at financial modeling. I'm good at structuring a way to do something in a way that to control it, to leverage it, to position it. That's what I feel like my skill set is. Right? I haven't bought near as many houses as you, although I've owned thousands of properties that we exited in some way owner financing. First of all, I'm asset agnostic. We are entering a market condition that is going to look a lot closer to the 80s and the 90s in certain part of the country than the 2008. 2008, the rest of real estate really wasn't dented. Residential housing was the dent, right? We're entering a market condition now that this is back like in the old RTC days. I mean, maybe a third of every deal you do is probably going to be on something other than just a regular house, because that stuff is going to get insanely cheap, but you got to go safety it up. I have a lot of people that are concerned. So I call where we're at right now, Mitch, a crash in slow motion. There are some lurking problems. And this isn't like you can say, well, Eddie's just crazy, or he wants the market to go bad because he thinks he's going to make more money in a black swan market. So let me just give you some stats. Okay. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, National Association of Realtors, National Home Builders Association, CoreLogic, all vote that we are going to experience in 2021 a decline in real estate values. They do not agree upon the percentage. They all agree it's going to happen. Okay. Now you're saying that's impossible, right? There's no inventory. Okay. In other words, there's no houses for sale. There's a pin-up demand for houses. You know, I hope everybody understands there's been a decline in who can qualify for a mortgage. About 30% of the people that could get a mortgage in January cannot get a mortgage today. So the mortgage banking industry is already bracing up for this. Okay, so where's the inventory? What breaks the market? So Mitch, there's 5 million loans in forbearance. Not 5 million loans in forbearance, meaning that they're not making a payment. So they're just kind of frozen in time. They're not making a payment. They're not paying taxes and insurance. They're just kind of like, you know, but the problem is the clock is ticking. And at the end of this forbearance, they got to write a check and bring it current. More of these loans have equity than not. Okay. They're not mortgaged up to the hilt. Here's another fact. There's 1.9 million loans that are 90 plus days delinquent right now. That's 7 million loans. And people,
it's coming. I mean, you just can't be handing out all this money and closing these businesses for this long. I mean, it would be almost, I can't even fathom how you don't have a repercussion from what's been going on. I just don't even fathom how it would be possible.
Right. So in that, embracing up for that, your fear would be, who am I going to sell to? And are they going to pay me? And I'm obligated to pay somebody else. And how do I know I can pay them back? So one of the things that became the obvious for me in this, and this has worked out this way, is one of the clauses that we put in a loan is there is a vacancy non-income clause. So if I'm not getting any money on the property, Mitch, I have a built-in forbearance for the seller finance note that they carried for me.
Wow. And
why not?
And the first thing that comes to my mind, and people really sign that stuff?
Hell yeah, they signed it.
Well, people tell me all the time, like, you know, they owe you money and you owe a bank, and if you don't pay your bank, everyone could lose the house. People actually buy a house under that condition? I say, yeah, every day. You know, it's stated right in the wraparound mortgage words that they have this inherent risk if they're going to buy this house that, you know, they send the money to Mitch, but if Mitch doesn't send the money to the underlying lien holder, then the underlying lien holder can wipe us all out. Yeah, they buy it every day. So I believe
what's funny is I didn't think of that until the virus and all this forbearance, right? I mean, I understood the concept, but I didn't really think of it. And then all of a sudden I'm like, listen, their number one fear is that I don't pay them and they have to go take some kind of legal action. Right. And I'm just saying, I do not want us to be in a situation that due to something that I didn't cause, that I'm somehow in a position where I'm short on paying you. So in a catastrophic situation, if something happened where I'm not collecting money, then we're just both not going to collect money for a period of time. And then that's just a temporary thing and we solve the problem.
Okay, so very unique parallel here in our minds kind of think alike. We express it different. But so I was doing, you know, with my private lenders, I have right now this minute on the street in San Antonio or about $26 million of private money that I owe. I mean, their checks yesterday, they're spitting out of the deal $200 and some odd $1,000 worth of payments every month on the first. Okay. So, but it's kind of the same thing you said. I'm a non-recourse collateral only, and I tell my private lenders every day of the week, if you agree to make me this loan on this property, you need to go be sure, because I have two rights every day of my life. I have the right to pay as agreed, and I have the right to walk my position in that property over to you and assign it to you. Whether that means I'm the owner, then I'll deed it to you. If I had a note, then I'll deed you the note, whether the note's paying or not paying. It's kind of what you said. I have that right. But what do you think a doctor says to me when I say, you know, I'm just not, and I've never said this before, I've never given a house back and I've never not made the payment, but I'm doing it for the same reason. In case there's a cataclysmic event that has nothing to do with me, that I could have no more prevented or had the foresight at all. a meteor, a nuclear dirty bomb in downtown San Antonio, some act of terrorism that pollutes land, water, whatever. What do you think a doctor says when I walk up and say, look, I can't make the payments on this. I'm thinking strongly about walking you over the deed to this house, or you could just forego the payments for a while I try to work it out. But right now I can't make the payment. What do you want to do? The doctor's going to say to me, for God's sake, don't give me that house. Let's just postpone until you start so you start collecting payments again. I'll just don't make a payment. That's what they're going to say. So I completely relate. I was just looking at it just a tad different than you. You're actually putting it in blatantly in their face. You know, I know that 99.9% of the time, if I want to give this 80-year-old or 70-year-old lady back the house, or you could work with me, they're going to work with me.
Right. No, we just put it in there because, you know, it's, and once again, being around the note space and buying a lot of distressed notes and reworked notes, modified loans. I mean, we've seen all these crazy clauses and agreements, right? So I just had to kind of like get my mind wrapped around it because I had a student was kind of panicky, right? And he said, I just can't commit to the cash flow if something happened to my cash flow. You know, he was sort of an engineer, technical type person, not as risky as you and I would be, Mitch. And I'm like, okay, fine. Then bake it in the agreement. You don't have to pay if you're not getting paid. And he's like, you can do that? And I'm like, sure you can. You know, I didn't tell him I'd never thought of that before.
Well, hey, but my point is a lot of my students too, they're the same thing. They say, man, I just don't like to borrow money. I like to do my houses all cash. I say, it'll take you forever to get where you're going if you don't use the power of leverage. What you're afraid of is failing on your commitment to someone. So make your offers to where the worst thing can happen is you walk the deed back over to them, or you hand them your position in the property. Whatever your position is, you just disavow yourself and say, you know, you don't have to sue me in a court. You don't have to go through foreclosure. This is my promise to you. You'll never have to come take this from me. If I can't pay you, I will give you this. I will fly to your house if I have to, and I will hand it to you. And so that's how come I can sleep with the amount of money that I owe. I mean, I know that there's people out there that owe more money than I owe by a long shot. I'm just saying, for little old Mitch Stephen, that's how I sleep at night, owing $26 million to private people at 8 and 9 and 10%, is because I know that the worst thing can happen is I just give them my position. And they can't pursue me in a court of law. They can't take my storages and my other assets. They can only come at me for that one property. And once people who are scared, like your engineer guy, get to that conclusion, all of a sudden this world opens up to them now. That because moving with straight cash is a long, hard road. You agree?
There's no doubt. And once again, we reached a kind of a pinnacle in real estate investing. The biggest wholesaling and house buying became the biggest it had ever been, most competitive Mitch has ever seen by far. And they all did it with kind of one strategy in mind, which was trying to buy a house at a discount. And if you think about it, that was sort of the, you know, if you could just break the mold and try to approach that your competition doesn't try, that's what entrepreneurs do. So the creative financing to me is, well, honestly, I think it's more entrepreneurial than just offering cash every time, which is obviously where Mitch has built such a portfolio doing it.
So when you learn these different ways, I mean, one of the greatest things books I ever read was Nothing Down by Robert Allen, right? Where he just explained all these ways to do something when you don't have any money. And a lot of it was very creative along these levels. And if you think about it, on all those houses, I won't say all of them because you know how the money kind of dribbles in sometimes, but potentially I don't have any of my money in any of those houses. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to. My private lenders don't disallow me to take money out or take rehab money up front. You know, private lenders do what you want to do. If you go to an institution, they're going to dictate to you the terms that you're going to get. And when you're finding private money, or when you're talking to a seller, you get to describe the terms that are acceptable to you, and it's a completely different game. So
You dictate the terms.
so you have a giveaway for our audience, and I really appreciate it. Describe a little bit of what you're giving away, and then I'll give the link for them to get to it.
Okay. So you mentioned a book of ideas, a book of like different ways to structure deals. And so I wrote a book, and it's an ebook. It's not terribly long. It's about 50 pages. It's about 5 chapters. And that ebook is about this. And so if you ever remember the movie Moneyball, you know, about the baseball story and stuff. So I kind of patterned this book after that movie, because we're just looking at real estate through a different set of lens, like he looked at baseball through a different set of lens, right? So we called it A Whole New Ball Game with Creative Financing. And the idea is, specifically, the subtitle of the book is Post-COVID. So we rewrote this book after the virus, understanding there were some things that were slightly different. So they're going to get a book, and the best way I have learned to teach is by case studies.
Yes.
So we've got a little mini course, and we just do case studies, kind of explain concepts. Here's how you would apply this. So I've learned that it's easier, you get where they can see the numbers and they can follow the process and stuff. And then all of a sudden, this isn't super advanced, but this is hopefully going to be a little different level than just the basic, I make offers with 0 interest, right? It's a little more creative than that.
Just a little. Do you think, Eddie? Just a little? That's going to be an understatement, guys. You need to learn when Eddie's having his dry, sarcastic sense of humor. That was it right there. It's just a little more complex than that. So it's called A Whole New Ball Game. What?
With Creative Financing.
With Creative Financing. Okay, I want you guys to go to 1000houses.com/note strategies. Note strategies. And get over there to the show notes. There's going to be a lot of other stuff there. You'll know how to contact Eddie, get with him, see all the different things he offers. We like to deliver a lot of content on the show, and that's the intent. But Eddie has been an educator for a long time. He's taught thousands of students in his career. And if you want to see how a creative mind works, just go sit in that room, because it's amazing. Sometimes it's almost too much. Like, when I first met you, I wasn't, when you're ready for concepts and you'll grab them, but sometimes, like one time I talked to Peter Fortunato. I mean, I didn't talk to him. I was in the class, and like I could understand everything he said, and it was just blowing my mind, but I could not repeat it, redo it on a piece of paper to myself. I could not remember it. I thought I could follow it when he went. So several years passed by, and he was in town, and I thought, I'm going to go see him again and see if I can follow him now. And I could follow him now. You know what I mean? So sometimes that was kind of the way I was with you at the very beginning when you were talking this stuff. I thought, I just had a remembrance. I thought, man, this guy's over my head. I mean, I understand, but I don't understand. I mean, I can't retain it. It's like drinking from a fire hose. It was too much. You told me for the longest time, if you created these little seconds or if you just sold partials and you kept all these little pieces of notes in your back pocket, I don't know, it was like 10 years later, I called Eddie and said, Eddie, I'm starting to do these things. He goes, yeah, I told you about that 10 years ago. And I said, yeah, I know. It just became real for me. I just owned the concept. I just got the concept owned in my heart. I can watch you all the time. I can hear what you're saying, but to understand a concept's one thing. To own the concept is when you really get it. And normally how you get it is when you do it one time on accident, or you're forced to do something, and then you say, wow, why haven't I been doing that all the time? Or that's what Eddie's been talking about. Or that's what Robert Allen was trying to tell me. So again, go to 1000houses.com/note strategies and get your free ebook. It's about 50 pages. It's centered around case studies, which is always fun because there's a finite set of parameters, and then they show you what you do with those finite set of parameters, which is way better than the hypothetical, because the hypothetical can branch so much that we even forget what the deal's about. So I love case studies. It's called A Whole New Ball Game with Creative Financing. And check it out. Anything else you want to say to the folks out there before maybe we wrap it up, Eddie?
Well, Mitch, I just say to you personally, man, we've had quite a ride for a long time.
It has been quite a ride. We've seen a lot of ups and downs and had a lot of late night conversations where one of us was sweating pretty hard, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. The good news is, like you said, entrepreneurs solve problems. And, you know, even sometimes when we were really scared and markets were turning and things were happening that on the surface were petrifying, if you calm down enough and start to talk to enough smart people, you start to figure out, okay, this is where we got to morph to. If we'll just morph to this over here. You know, my situation was when all the note buyers quit buying, you know, that one Tuesday, we call it Black Tuesday. What was that, 2001?
2000.
Two? I don't know.
Yeah, 2002 is basically when associates went out. And then I've become very, and I, you know, obviously I think I had some influence on you doing this. I think you were doing it some before, but I became very convinced after the 2008 crisis that I was not going to be in any way or shape or form reliant on institutional money. Institutional money is awesome and it's easy when it's plentiful, and it's a backbreaker when it's not. And so I'm very focused on private capital, and I know you are. And I just would tell you, if you're looking with two guys with some gray hair and experience, there's a reason that we're zeroed in on private capital. Nope. Got no problem with the banks. I just don't want to owe them a lot of money when things don't go good.
Well, you know, my banker is one of my best friends. He was my high school quarterback, and he's the CEO of the bank, and I've borrowed and paid back to him at least $50 million in my career. That's just the bank money. That's not the private money. And he would hand me these papers to sign for the loan. And all I would really look at is the interest rate and the term. And then I'd sign the papers. He goes, "You're not going to read the document?" And I said, "I don't really need to read the document." And he goes, "I find that amazing. You're not going to read the document." And I said, he goes, "Why aren't you reading the document?" And I said, "Well, because I already know what it says. It basically says you have my testicles over a highline wire. And whenever you want to flip the switch, I'm fried. That's what it says, right?" He goes, "Pretty much." And I said, "Okay, so I'm trusting that you and I are going to have a relationship, and I'm going to get this thing done before, you know, and that it will be a last resort. You won't do that to me." And that's really what it was. Today, I'm a little more sophisticated, and I have enough behind me to go negotiate some of those clauses out now, or demand that I don't want these clauses in there. Sometimes they do it, sometimes they don't. But and I don't have to take their loan anymore. But before, I needed the money so bad, I just had to, you know, go out there and take the chance that they were going to not call my note. Because basically every note that I ever signed with a bank, if you look hard enough, you'll find the clause that says they can call the note for almost anything in the world. And if not, they have so many regulatory things that you have to do to keep the note in compliance that there's no way you can comply. And so you've got to miss one of those dates of supplying them something, and then they can call the note. So, all right, my friends, I'd like to thank everybody for stopping by to get you some Eddie Speed, my good friend from way back. If you want to learn the note business, I mean, this guy is a pro. It's in depth. He'll take you all the way down the road from the beginning to the end. All that information's over in the show notes. Go to 1000houses.com/note strategies and get your free ebook, about 50 pages of case studies, a whole new ball game with creative financing. All right. I'd like to thank my sponsor, livecom.com, livecom.com. Check it out. It's a little piece of gold you can put in your pocket and carry for a long time. It will pay. All right, we're out of here. This is Mitch Stephen with the 1000houses.com podcast. We gone.